My name's Erica. I'm with Parents for Teachers. I'm a CPS parent myself, and I'm going to give you just a quick rundown of who we are and why we called this meeting, and then we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of it. So Parents for Teachers is a group that came together back in 2011 because we were pretty fed up with the way the way teachers were being treated in the media, by the politicians. Rahm Emanuel had just come to town and with his accusations that teachers had given the kids the shaft, and that just didn't match the experience that we all as parents had in our own lives with our own teachers in our own schools. So we felt there needed to be a parent voice that stands up and says, hey, wait a minute, teachers are not the problem. The problems our schools have are bigger. They stem from a lack of funding, they stem from inequities, they stem from poverty, and they stem from policies that are just wrong-headed over the last decade, policies that have been trying to privatize our public schools instead of giving them the resources they need. So we've been working alongside lots of the people in this audience that I see today, fighting school closings. We were one of the founding members of More Than a Score, the testing resistance group, supporting the teachers when they went out and strike, and really just taking a stand for quality schools for all children. We know that for many kids in CPS, for some kids in CPS, the schools work. My kids went to some of the best schools in the district. I have no complaints about the education my children got, but I know that my kids are some of the very lucky few. And so we feel very strongly that parents have to join together, north side, south side, west side, rich, poor, black, white, Latino. This is our city. We all have to fight for quality schools for every child in our district. Thank you. I had a feeling this crowd would like that. So why are we here tonight? As everyone knows, the teacher's contract expires on June 30th, and they've been embroiled in negotiations. We've got Jesse Sharkey, Vice President of the union, here. He'll give us an update on how those are going. But what we know is that the union has been very public about what it would like to see in the new contract. They want classroom improvements, they want less testing, more time for teaching, things that are really going to improve the conditions in our schools. And you know, good conditions for teachers are good learning conditions for our children. You can't you know, say you're putting the kids first if you're bashing the teachers, taking resources away from them, closing schools, all the types of things we've seen over the last several years. So the union has been very public, but we haven't heard a single word from CPS about what its vision for our schools are, what it would like to see in the next contract. And so in April, we went down to the board meeting with a letter signed by more than a dozen parent and community groups, and we asked them to attend 3 forums. This is the first forum tonight. We asked them to attend 3 public forums to have an open discussion, to engage with parents, teachers, people from the community about the issues that are at stake. And as you can see by the empty seats up here, they declined our invitation. We think that was a mistake on their part. But after tonight, we're going to make sure that all of your voices are heard. We have a court reporter up here. She's going to transcribe the entire proceeding tonight, every single word, and we will take those transcripts down to the Board of Ed, and we will make them listen. So we're going to, just a little bit about the format for tonight. I'm going to, in a minute, introduce Jesse Sharkey, the Vice President of the union. And I think, as we all know, Jesse has had to really step up in the last several months to fill in for his boss, Karen Lewis, who has been battling cancer. Jesse, please give Karen our best and the best wishes. We always hope the best for her. He is going to give kind of the broad picture lay of the land, what's going on with the negotiations, generally, big picture, what the teachers would like to achieve, what the status is, where we're at, possibility for a strike next fall. You know, he's going to lay that out. And then we are fortunate to have with us some of his colleagues who were members of the actual bargaining committee. So these are the people who are sitting across the table from CPS in those very intense negotiations that are going on right now. And so they're going to, we're going to have that presentation take about 25 minutes, hopefully. Then we're going to have questions and answers from all of you. We've got these little sheets if you'd like to write comments, questions. We'll be collecting them. If you want to read your comment and question yourself, you can come up to the mic. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, we're happy to do that for you. And we'll be going through the audience as things come up. So jot notes and comments down, and we'll make sure that we try to get every comment and question answered before the night is over. We're going to do it in like 15-minute blocks. So we'll have 15 minutes of feedback and questions from you all, and then allow our panelists to respond. Then another block of 15 minutes, a few more responses, and we'll see how far that takes us. Then at the end of the evening, we want to have a call to action. Because right now, the CTU is involved in these negotiations. But unlike many other labor unions, they are really restricted in what can happen in those negotiations. The CPS is not actually required to negotiate with the union over anything other than pay and benefits. So if the board doesn't want to negotiate about class size, they don't have to. Well, there are classes in this city that have upwards of 40 kids in them. That's not okay. They need to take that seriously. They need to make that part of the negotiations, and they need to address those issues. So it's going to fall on all of us to pressure the district to take those issues seriously and resolve them once and for all. So we have some postcards for everyone to sign. On your way out, drop them off with us. Take some back to your school if you want. Get other folks to sign them, get them back to us. And at the end of the evening, if you think you'd like to go back to your school and host a meeting with parents and teachers to continue this discussion, talk to us. We have a sign-in sheet at the table, and we'd be happy to help facilitate that. So at this time, I'd like to ask Jesse to come on up. Everyone, let's give a round of applause for Jesse Sharkey, Vice President of the Teachers Union.
Thank you, Erica, and thank you all for being here tonight and caring about the question of what's going on in our schools. I'm a CPS parent myself. I've got an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old who attend public school in Chicago, and I can say that there's a daily battle that goes on, and I watch it inside my son's classrooms and inside their school in general, for the people who go to work in that environment to try to deliver a high-quality education with far too few resources. And it's in that context that I want to talk to you tonight about what's going on at the negotiating table, and maybe try to answer some questions for you about what are the prospects. How do we see those negotiations playing out over the course of the next several months? I'll begin by saying that the Chicago Teachers Union brings a big table to the team. The rank and file members who are here, and these are elementary school teachers, paraprofessionals, high school teachers, counselors, a librarian. These folks are part of a 50-person rank and file bargaining team, so we try to actually bring the real experience from the classroom into the negotiation chamber, into that room, that actually we feel has been very positive. It's created some good discussions at the table, but that as a practical matter, negotiations have been going extremely slowly. And that's the first thing I need to report. The negotiations in Illinois by law are divided into 3 phases: a negotiation phase, a mediation phase, and finally a fact-finding phase before they can resolve. In 2012, we were already in the 3rd phase, so as hard as that negotiation was, we had been moving this process along, and we were starting to get ready to hear a fact-finding report. This year, we're still in the 1st phase. We had not received any formal proposals from the Board of Education at all. Not a single formal written proposal, the bargaining team can speak to this, prior to last Thursday. And we've been negotiating with the board since November. At first we thought maybe it was the election, that they were waiting to see how the question of the political leadership of the city would resolve before they came to us. Now we just think they're deliberately stalling. I believe that they're deliberately stalling because they see sort of a good cop, bad cop routine being set up between Rahm and the city as good cop and Rauner and Springfield as bad cop, in which they hope that the union will be forced to give concessions as they relate to the working conditions in the school, the treatment of its employees, that we'll be forced to give up on many of our demands because Springfield will impose harsh austerity, perhaps take away rights through the legislative process, and the governor can get that as part of a grand bargain. And so as a result, we think that there's sort of a lack of impulse on their part to bargain seriously with us as long as sort of there's a boogeyman waiting for us downstate through the legal process. This is terrifying. Because if you recall, it was this precise lack of willingness to engage with bargaining in good faith at the table in the first instance that led us to the problems last time, where the mayor thought that he didn't have to really deal with the serious issues that we were raising at the table because, you know, we wouldn't have the right to strike, the legislature would just take our rights away, this new process would come in and force teachers and whatnot to make all kinds of concessions. All this is by way of saying that we think the negotiations are going poorly, shaping up to be a battle. And I'll just make 3 quick points and then conclude, and I know I don't have a lot of time. The first one is that we think that the Chicago Public Schools are broke on purpose. I know that's a funny phrase to hear, but there's been a lot of talk about financial crisis in the shortfall in terms of the board's revenues, but we think that they've quite deliberately left large amounts of revenue on the table, and that if there's a revenue crisis for the board, it's by endeavor. So, for example, there's a whole number of bond auction swaps on bond deals, which have cost the board somewhere in excess of $500 million. We think there's a very good case for them to make to sue the banks to try to recoup many of those losses. They've made no attempt to do that. In fact, there's talk about repaying some of these banks for these contracts at 100 cents on the dollar. In Detroit, when the bondholders sort of finally had to come to terms with their debt, they paid 25 cents on the dollar. Why should Chicago pay 100 cents on the dollar for bad paper when the going rate is much less than that? And I could go on. There's a big TIF surplus. The powerful people who run this district, and I'm talking about the appointed members of the board, haven't made a peep about a progressive income tax or about some of the other ideas that we've had. They'll tax casino, tax grandma when she spends her Social Security check, but they won't tax the people who want to gamble on financial transactions on LaSalle Street. So we're saying they're broke on purpose. Second point is that our demands are really about good schools, and you'll hear much more about that. But we believe there's really a low simmering crisis in the public schools in which there's far too few resources to deliver a high quality education that we really feel like we deserve. And that if anything, a 7-hour day and a 180-day student year and a 190-day teacher year exacerbated those problems, in which literally our educators can't get the time they need to collaborate, to plan, to actually make instruction of consistently high quality. It's produced a rising stress level so that any school you go into in the city, it's the first thing you hear is they're killing us. The working conditions are terrible. Do we recognize that the district is broke, or they're broke on purpose, but there is a real revenue crisis, so we're saying we're not seeking a big raise. We're seeking a 3% raise, which is the same thing the board had mentioned that we might get in an extension back when this thing was settled in 2012. But that's not an offer. What's on offer is a 7% cut. So we're looking for 3%, they're looking for negative 7% in the school's contracts. I do not think those demands are about good schools on their part. Finally, I just want to make this point, which we have the ability to win a good settlement if we stick together. One of the things they did last year to balance the budget is they signed a fiscal deal that was where they booked 14 months of revenue for a 12-month year. So ordinarily, property tax revenue comes in July and August, and that's the money they use to open the schools in September. right, to make payroll. Payroll is $100 million of payroll or so in Chicago Public Schools. This year, they borrowed $500 million to pay their obligations when the property tax, several weeks ago, when the property tax revenue in July and August comes in, they're going to use that money to repay the bondholders, and I do not know if they have the money to open schools in September, the way it currently looks. The only way for them to do it is if we make real demands about we want good schools and we demand taxes on the people who can afford it to pay for good schools. We are, in a way that we've, that's right. Short of that, short of our united political voice making demands on the people with power and money, we are not going to see a settlement that's going to give us the kinds of schools that our children deserve. So just those three things. CPS is broke on purpose, our demands are about good schools, and if we stick together, we have the power to win that. Thank you. I guess I'm introducing our next, so we're going to hear a series of speakers. Let me just run down the list of who you're going to hear from, and that way I don't have to run back up to this podium each time. First, we're going to hear from Sarah Chambers, who teaches at Saucedo Elementary School. Sarah has been one of the leaders in among teachers in CPS, speaking out against the misuse of high-stakes testing. And she'll be talking to some of the demands in the contract about testing. Next, after that, we're going to hear from Ellen Damlich. Ellen is going to talk about schools as safe houses for learning. Ellen is a librarian at a Northside neighborhood high school. She's also on our bargaining committee. Then we're going to hear from John Casey, who teaches at, who's a counselor at Cameron Elementary School, who's going to talk about our need in the schools to treat students like human beings, and he's going to talk about some of the student-centered contract demands that we have to make. We're going to hear from LaShawn Wallace, who's a PSRP, a paraprofessional. Shawn, what job do you do in particular there? What are you a clerk? Are you a clerk? No, I'm a teacher assistant. Shawn is a teacher assistant at Taft High School, and she's going to talk about the role that schools serve in our community, and again highlight the contract demands, which will help us do that work. And finally, we're going to hear from Tim Megan, who is a teacher at Roosevelt High School, and who's going to talk about the Roosevelt High School. And was a heck of a candidate for alderman in the 33rd Ward. 17 votes, was it, Tim? We'll get you 17 votes next time. Who's going to talk about the financial aspects of our proposals and revenue solutions in the city of Chicago. So, Sarah Chambers.
So I'm talking about some demands that are really a hot topic for teachers, parents, and students, and will also save CPS millions of dollars. Because they're claiming broke, let's find them some money. And so those demands are reduction in standardized testing and paperwork. So in our contract proposals, we're demanding a significant reduction in these harmful standardized tests and an increasing in instructional time. So currently, for 3rd through 8th graders, they take 15 to 18 standardized tests. So just imagine how many instructional hours are lost from this. And that's even more for students with disabilities who take more time. So we know that you don't fatten a pig up by weighing it constantly, okay? Any farm people here? Well, you don't have a child learn more by testing them constantly. It doesn't make sense. And we're demanding that our students only take one standardized test. Just like when I was a student, we only had one standardized test. And with that one standardized test, it cannot exceed 6 hours. Currently, these students are taking tests that are as long as the bar exam that people take to become a lawyer. That is a problem when 3rd graders, 8, 9-year-olds are taking those tests. And for our babies, our preschoolers, our kindergartners, all the way up to kindergarten, we're not going to have them taking any standardized tests. These tests are not developmentally appropriate. The kids should be showing what they know through play-based techniques, And with our special education students, students that have disabilities, they shouldn't be taking tests that don't have their accommodations and modifications in mind, because frankly, that is illegal. Because, brothers and sisters, we don't want to be punishing our children. They are punishing our students by having them take this test. And so we're saying you cannot punish our students. We're saying for those students, those schools that score low, you're not going to punish them by closing their school, by taking away graduation, promotion rights. We're going to help the schools. We're going to help those students. We're going to give them more resources. We're going to lower class sizes, have targeted interventions for those students that need it rather than actually punishing them. And with this really comes also a reduction in paperwork. Currently, any teacher you ask, I know there's a lot of teachers in the room, we're drowning in paperwork. And majority of this paperwork has to do with data, just constant data analysis, which frankly doesn't tell us what we know about our students. So we have bargaining demands that say, no, we need a reduction of paperwork so we can actually focus on lesson plans, engaging lesson plans, unit plans, and things that matter in the classroom. And with all of this combined, I just want to remind you all that this will save CPS money, and it'll help teachers and students have the schools that they deserve. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? My name is Ellen Damlick, and I am a CPS librarian of 13 years, and I'm very proud to have always worked in neighborhood schools. How many of you believe that our students and families have a right to expect that our schools are safe houses for learning? Of course, it's a no-brainer. It is essential that our schools are safe, comfortable, and clean environments where students can learn productively. CTU is demanding that the board take measures to ensure clean and safe schools. We're also asking for air conditioning in all schools by 2020. Class size is another major priority. We are bargaining to reduce class size across the board. Of course, the closing of 50 schools in CPS, actually more than 50 schools, has exacerbated this issue of class size. It is our goal to have enforceable class size maximums in place for everyone, particularly students in the early childhood programs, elementary grades, and special ed classrooms. Are 40 students in a primary classroom ever acceptable? We are also bargaining for fully staffed schools with certified teachers across the board, arts across the curriculum, including dance and visual art, music, theater, and of course, world languages and PE. All students deserve access to a full range of arts and world languages. These classes give our students opportunities to explore their interests and develop their talents. Our students also need libraries with certified librarians. Of course, this is near and dear to my heart. We librarians support classroom teachers and students in reading promotion and information literacy. Often the school library is the only place where students can access information to complete school projects. And I'm delighted to spend many hours every week supporting students as they complete research projects, edit scholarship essays for college, or simply find something to read. Finally, our students deserve access to school nurses. The National Association of School Nurses recommends a ratio of 1 certified school nurse to every 750 students in a healthy general education environment. In CPS, the school nurse to student ratio is closer to 1 in 2,000. It's disturbing. Most of our school nurses are assigned to several schools, and it's preposterous that a student might need to see a nurse on a Tuesday, but that nurse is only in the building on Mondays and Wednesdays. When schools are staffed properly with nurses, they can focus on promoting wellness through health education and screening and things related to hygiene and maintaining chronic illnesses. Doesn't every neighborhood deserve a safe, comfortable, responsibly staffed school where students can flourish? Please work with us to win all of our students in all of our entire city the contract our students deserve. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Casey. I'm a school counselor and special ed case manager at Cameron Elementary School on the west side of Chicago. I'm also a proud CPS parent with a child in elementary school and a Chicago Public High School. Too often we're asked to ascertain where a child is at with a test score, but our students are human beings. And as human beings, many of them come to school with human needs that must be addressed before we can even begin to address academic needs. We have students with multiple medical conditions, diabetes, asthma, and food allergies, to name a few. We have students, an increasing number of students, who are homeless or living in temporary living situations. We have students who suffer from depression, grief, and loss. Gun violence alone extracts an enormous toll on our youth. Just this last weekend, 49 people were shot in Chicago, including a 15-year-old 8th grader from my school. He is an outstanding student with a bright future. He was just another innocent victim of the random violence going on in our city. He's home now and he's physically recovering, but he suffered. His family has suffered. His classmates and their families have suffered. And the faculty of my school has suffered. We need staff in our schools who can address these human needs. And when these needs are met, we need staff who can work with our teachers and parents to ensure that our students receive learning that is meaningful and developmentally relevant. To that end, the CTU will bargain for true access to full-day early childhood education and kindergarten, including free pre-K for students whose family income is up to 300% of the federal poverty guidelines. The CTU will bargain to ensure that schools with the highest numbers of students in temporary living situations have full-time staff working to address their needs both inside and outside of school. The CTU will bargain to mandate that school counselors and clinicians are staffed at levels that respect the recommendations of the professional organizations, and that counselors in particular are not assigned additional duties, such as special ed case management, that cause them to be unable to actually counsel and work with students. The CTU will bargain to guarantee that each school is staffed with a full-time, fully licensed school nurse whose role is to address the health needs of all students. The CTU will bargain to staff a full-time restorative justice coordinator for every school and to limit the CPS staff, and limit the ability of CPS to staff schools with police officers which contribute to the school-to-prison pipeline. Thanks. The CTU will bargain to restore and to return the staffing of truancy officers whose work centers around helping families remove barriers and solve problems that keep students from attending schools. CTU wants to bargain for students to have increased access to curriculum materials that are multicultural and multiracial and reflect their identities and their experiences. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is LaShawn Wallace, and I am a teacher assistant at Taft High School. I've been a part of CPS for 20+ years, and I love my job. Schools, I'm talking about schools, are anchors in our communities. We really understand that we need schools in our communities because the schools help communities thrive. Extensive research continues to show that Chicago is a deeply segregated city, where families live in different neighborhoods have significantly different assets and access to resources. Do you agree? We have entrenched poverty, the erosion of stable, well-paying jobs, and a lack of investment in many poor and working-class neighborhoods, particularly Black and Latino neighborhoods. Continue to cause our students and their parents to experience vast different life opportunities that some Chicagoans living in more affluent communities experience. It will take investing in more than schools to address this inequality, but schools that are fully resourced can and should serve as anchors in our community. Thank you. To that end, CTU will bargain for policies that strive to achieve increased integration of students' population in schools and to invest significant and substantial resources into at least 50 sustainable community schools in CPS. Today, I stand to say that Taft High School is a model of being a community high school. We have 90% of our students living within the school area. 96.5% of our students attend college. We have an outstanding IB school in Illinois, and we have a great principal. The CPS will bargain to halt charter school proliferations, schools closings and turnarounds, and other schools' actions which destabilize communities and increase students' mobility. As we can recall, I walked to school for 12 years, from kindergarten all the way to high school. Our students now experience having to travel 2 to 3 miles a day trying to commute from home to school, getting up at wee early hours of the morning and getting home very late, sometimes not even seeing their parents. The CTU will bargain to ensure that all CPS employees and all employees subtracted from CPS receive a living minimum wage of at least $15 an hour. This will help our parents to sustain one good job that would take care of the needs of their home, so in the evening they can be at home with their children and not having to work 2 or 3 part-time jobs. In my closing, the Chicago Teachers Union will bargain to provide all workers in this city and state with a defined benefit pension plan. To let some of you know that teachers, clinicians, paraprofessionals, we do not receive Social Security. So we depend upon our pension plans, and we should not, I say we should not retire in poverty.
Hi, everybody. Just a little commercial break. My name is Rhoda with Parents for Teachers. Thank you all for coming tonight. Before we finish with our last 2 speakers, I just wanted to encourage you to, I know you're taking notes and you've got a lot that you're processing right now in terms of the presentations and what we're hearing regarding the contract negotiations. And I'd like to encourage you to please fill out these public participation and feedback forms, because right after the panel is done, we're going to open up the rest of the program for the important part, for public comment, to hear about the educational priorities that you as parents, you as students, you as community members want to be seen, discussed in these negotiations. So we have Karen over here in the middle, and she's from Northside Action for Justice. I just want to give a round of applause to the group for helping to organize the event. If you would like to fill these out but don't want to read them, we're happy to read them out loud for you at the mic at the center. But again, please fill them out. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your concerns, your proposals for solutions, your solutions regarding the crisis that the supposed crisis that our district is facing. And so now I just turn it over to the last 2 speakers on this wonderful panel. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. So CPS is facing its own manufactured crisis. They simultaneously starve out our neighborhood schools using student-based budgeting as a smokescreen while spending freely on private contracts and charter proliferation. In balancing the budget, CPS plays tricks with their money by modifying the length of the fiscal year and hiding money in reserve accounts. CPS annually claims historic deficits while ending the fiscal year with hundreds of millions of dollars in surplus. 2 years ago, the historic $1 billion deficit was closed with $700 million in reserve funds. Last year, the budget was closed by extending the fiscal year by 2 months. I do not know if this year's budget will be based on 10 months of revenue or 12 months. Some examples of wasteful spending that occurs at CPS. $5 million on new office furniture for their new corporate headquarters. $20 million soups contract, which was completely ridiculous. Dozens of new charter schools. Outsider contracting, Substance News reports outsider contract spending up 122% to $1.4 billion in just the past 10 years. Aramark's contract, which leaves our schools filthy, has gone over budget by $22 million in the first year. CPS has borrowed over $250 million just to close the 50 schools that they claimed they needed to close because they didn't have the money to run them. And TIF program siphons about $250 million out of CPS's budget annually. And then millions more on standardized testing that doesn't tell us, as Sarah said, anything about our students that we don't already know. So it doesn't have really a pension, or rather there's a revenue crisis, basically. Even Senate President John Cullerton admitted so much. We need new revenue, but politicians aren't willing to tax the super rich. Well, here are some ideas that we have floated for years now that politicians just seem to repeatedly forget. TIF money, the $250 million a year that TIF siphons off of our school budgets should be returned every year. The toxic swaps need to be renegotiated. As Jesse mentioned, they cost CPS over $500 million so far and will continue to cost as much as another $500 million in the future. Rahm Emanuel said there's something called a contract, but other municipalities, including large cities like Los Angeles, have successfully renegotiated these loans. So far, there's been no attempt here in Chicago to renegotiate these deals. At the state level, we can close tax loopholes. Illinois loses $8.5 billion to offshore tax shelters in just 2014 alone. That's enough to cover the entire state's deficit, or equivalent to $1,400 for every taxpayer in the state. The millionaire tax in 2014, the referendum was voted on by Illinois voters. That would add a 3% income tax to those who pull down $1 million or more. Illinois residents voted yes on that by 64%, so long as the money went to education, yet we've seen no action there. We need a graduated income tax. If this state implemented a graduated income tax or a fair tax like Oregon does, with the top tax bracket being at 9.9%, that would double our state's revenue. And finally, we need a financial transaction tax. If we taxed 1 cent on every $100 that is traded on public markets, that would amount to $30 or $40 billion every year. And that figure excludes taxing mutual funds, retirement, and pension accounts. These revenue solutions have been promoted, but politicians haven't taken action. And so for us to both present, this is the wasteful spending, and on the other hand, these are common sense revenue solutions that should be implemented. For the district to come back and say, no, we need 7 to 10% from our teachers, frankly makes teachers feel like often they're the least important part of the Chicago public school system. And we further feel insulted when we're asked to take a pay cut when the CEO, Barbara Byrd Bennett, and board member Deborah Quazzo are making money off of the contracts and the financial dealings directly that our appointed Board of Education is spending their money on. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sharice McDaniel. I'm a CPS parent and a member of Parents for Teachers. It is now that I would like to open the forum up for public comment. We welcome students, parents, community members to voice their concerns, questions, comments, and testimonials. We'll try to keep it at 2 to 3 minutes each speaker so that everyone may have a chance to speak. And after about 15 minutes of comment, we'll turn it over to the panel for discussion. And if we have time, we'll return to questions and comments. Thank you.
Great, so I'm just gonna call up the first few speakers is Sharina Allison, Paul Ripp, and Matilda De Dios. The mic is just right up here by Sharina. Correct. And when you come to the mic, could we kindly ask you to state your name and spell it?
Hi, my name is Sharina Allison. That's spelled S-H-E-R-E-E-N-A, Allison, A-L-L-I-S-O-N. I am a George Muneer parent, and the question that I have is, what will happen with IEP students? Because the reason why I say that, because you know, the mayor was trying to get rid of special needs classes and students. So that's why they build charter schools, so they won't have to deal with special needs children. So I want to know what is going on trying to fight for the rights for the special needs children.
Well, I can definitely speak to that. I'm a special education teacher. First of all, it is in federal law, their IEPs and their legal rights for students with disabilities. They cannot just take it away. I know the mayor wants to try, but we will be up in arms, because these are the students that, I mean, the most, you know, they're the ones that have the most difficulty getting jobs later on. They need those supports to be successful. And like I said, it's protected by state law, and we really need to join together with parents and teachers. I know in terms of Chicago Teachers Union, we actually have a special education committee, and we're actually want to join with other parents of kids with disabilities to kind of do a coalition group so we can fight a lot of these things that are harmful. So for example, they tried to take away class size caps for special ed, which is horrible, so they could put 80% of the class, have them be all special education students, which is horrifying. So we were able to shoot that down by testifying down in Springfield and calling our legislators. So if you have more questions about that, definitely come up and talk to me later.
Hello, I'm Paul Ripp. That's Paul.
Can you speak into the mic and spell your name, please? Thank you.
Paul, P-A-U-L, Ripp, R-I-P-P. P-P. I have two questions. One relates to recess. At my school, we've hired these outside contractors to supervise recess, and there's been a lot of problems with them. And they've told us that the current contract does not permit teachers to supervise recess. So my question is, does CTU have a position regarding supervision of recess by teachers? If there's a way to fix that, I would like to hear about it. My second question is, I heard it mentioned that CTU supports one standardized test. I'm wondering what that test is and why that test is chosen. I'm familiar with MAP is mandated by CPS, and whether that's preferred option. I also believe REACH is a test that was put together by teachers, and I would like to hear what CTU's current position on that is. Thank you.
Hi, my name is LaShawn Wallace. I'm going to speak to the recess. Like I stated earlier, I've been a part of CPS, and I'm a paraprofessional. 20 plus years, and that was my job in elementary school. We were on the playground with those students. There used to be in a building between 10 to 15 paraprofessionals. CPS has outsourced our jobs and kicked us out of the buildings, and we're much needed, and we've been fighting that. all we know how, so I understand, and we were the ones that lived in the community, and we became employed within the school. So we knew the children knew us, they trusted us, and we didn't really have a problem on the playground. So we're trying to get CPS to hire more of the community PSRPs to put them back in the schools, and we are a great resource to teachers as well. So that's one of our stands that we'll be taking and have taken over the years.
And just to respond to the testing, in our proposal it says one standardized test, the state exam, and that is because, I mean, frankly, we don't want any standardized tests. I mean, our testing committee does not want any standardized tests. Our union does not want any standardized tests. We want teacher-created assessment, performance-based assessment, portfolios, just like Finland has, and the best, education systems in the world, but there's no way they're going to agree to that. So we at least want to limit it down to one test. So we stated just the one state standardized test since it's required by No Child Left Behind.
Let me jump in there real quick. At the high school level, it would be the ACT. I mean, the ACT is important for students and their futures because they need it to get into college, and it's a state mandated graduation requirement. So at the high school level, that would be the one test that we would support.
Hi, good evening. My name is Matilda de Dios. My name is spelled M-A-T-H-I-L-D-A, last name D-E-D-I-O-S. I'm a parent of a third grader. Luckily, we opted out for testing, and she had a whole week where she could read 3 books independently that week. Her classmates were fatigued, and thank you to the efforts of parent organizing to be able to support us and support the educators in having options for youth. My question is actually regarding restorative justice and healthcare practitioners in the school. I started writing my question before you shared that, and so I broke out in applause, very excited about this investment. So I'd like to push it a little bit further. Has the bargaining team thought about expanding the bargaining unit to include, I guess, this fully staffed healthcare practitioner and restorative justice practitioner, right, to support the role of the paraprofs? But is there also a relationship with the security guard union to perhaps come up with some sort of supportive training and support for the teachers so that the teachers don't feel like their hands are tied and have to call security or the police, right? Because security is unionized and the police are unionized and the students don't have that representation. So I come at it from a little different of an angle, but one that is an advocate of teachers and the teachers' right to come up with classroom-based, developmentally appropriate conflict resolution techniques. But I would just like to encourage that. And again, as a parent, I'm fully supportive. We're going to stick together. We're going to win better schools. And thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
I'm going to read one person's testimony in a minute, but I just wanted to queue up the next 3 speakers: Megan Cusick, Mark Kaplan, and Marianne Marikoski. So this is a testimonial from Jaden Roque, J-A-E-D-E-N, Roque, R-O-Q-U-E, and he's a student at Talcott. This year, I opted out of PARCC testing. I sat in the office as the entire, he underlined the entire, 7th grade class was testing. As I sat alone on the hard bench for 2 hours, the assistant principal approached me and questioned why I had decided to opt out of testing. During the conversation, she intimidated me and made me feel as if not taking this test would affect my chances into getting into a high school. As she walked away, she gave me a hard scoff and said, quote, "Hope you can wow them in your high school interview," unquote. So the next public comment is coming from Megan Cusick. Do you want this, Megan?
My name is Megan, M-E-G-A-N, Cusick, C-U-S-I-C-K. I'm a CPS parent, a CPS teacher, and a member of Rogers Park Neighbors for Public Schools. And I'm speaking as a community member this evening. This is more of a comment than a question. And my comment is that I'm very concerned as a community member that CPS continues to entertain proposals for new charter schools in communities where enrollment is still available, or where there are still seats available in high schools, where we're seeing measurable progress at high schools, where we're seeing collaboration between elementary schools, and high schools across a network or an area. And CPS is still looking at proposals to bring charter schools into some of these communities. One of my specific concerns is about the Noble High School proposal in Rogers Park. But I'm also very concerned about Noble schools in general, which I think have regressive discipline policies and run in the face of all of the discipline progress that CPS claims to have made over the past few years, rather than pushing kids out, trying to find school-based solutions to student issues. So my question is, how can CPS look anybody in the eye and claim a deficit if they're still spending millions upon millions of dollars to open additional schools where they're not needed and where they're simply going to take funds away from our existing neighborhood schools that deserve our full support?
So before Mark comes on, comments are welcome. These are not just questions. So this is your forum, your concerns, your opinions, your proposals. These are all being recorded, and we will bring these all to CPS since they decided not to come today. So.
Hello, my name is Mark Kaplan, M-A-R-C-K-A-P-L-A-N.
Can you speak into the mic, Mark? Thank you.
Sure. My name is Mark Kaplan, M-A-R-C-K-A-P-L-A-N. I'm on the local school council at Uplift Community High School. My comment is this, that the Board of Ed, with its great funding, has, basically stripped schools like Uplift of supportive services. So while we're a high-quality social justice college preparatory high school, we have one counselor for the whole school. So what that's meant, in essence, is that teachers are doing double and triple duty because our mission, right, as is a mission in most schools, is to provide the highest quality of education that we can for our students. We have teachers that are not only teaching double or triple classes, but are also have to serve as counselors to help the students prepare the, all the papers that they have to fill out for college applications, to help the students, prepare for all those things that are necessary if they're going to get to the next level. And at Uplift, we have a very high level, not just of graduation, but also of student acceptance into college and students succeeding in college. We have a community, as most, low and moderate income communities, that has excessive violence going on in the neighborhood, and yet we've been stripped of counseling services. We've been stripped of, psychologists, all those supportive wraparound services that are necessary for a high-quality school to function. So that's my comment. We totally support, the teachers in their demands for high-quality wraparound services, restorative justice programs, and everything else that we are going to work on together to make sure it happens in all of our schools. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mary Ann Marikoski, M-E-R-I-K-O-S-K-I. I am a Bell parent. I'm also a member of Bell's local school council. I have to make the caveat that I do not speak on behalf of the LSC in what I'm about to say. I'm concerned, I did not know that there were all these other items on the table in these negotiations, and while I'm thrilled to hear that these are priorities for the CTU, I would like to say on behalf of myself, and I'm sure there are many other parents who feel the same way, the one issue that cannot be compromised on is your pay. There's a huge disparity, obviously, between what CPS is proposing and what you have been proposing thus far, and if you can get some of these other issues addressed in your negotiations, I think that's fantastic, but I cannot, as a parent, accept a pay cut. Not of 7%, not of 1%. So I obviously speak only for myself, but I'm fairly certain I have a lot of sympathy in other parents when I say that as you go through these negotiations, know that there are many parents out there who feel as I do that you must not accept a pay cut. Thank you.
Before I call up the next 4 speakers, does anyone from the CTU panel want to comment regarding the previous comments?
I just wanted to reach out to that one student who wrote, who had a kind of a bullying principal. That is horrifying, and shame on your principal, okay? And I also just want to say, keep fighting, because in many schools, for years this has happened, many schools, it starts with one student. Honestly, it starts with one student, a handful of students. And next year, more will come. Maybe hundreds more will come. So keep fighting. And this is the other reason, to be honest, teachers, we have a union, so we can stand up for kids like this when the principal is bullying them. And then just one other thing in terms of the counselors. Our counselors are basically test proctors. You take away all these tests, they can actually counsel. And at my school, I have a very large school, and they're just constantly testing. NWA went from Park, right after Park, overlapped with NWA, overlapped with, and it was just constant testing. And it does affect students applying to schools. I teach a group of special education students, and I have 13 students, and I work day and night with them to finish as many applications as possible. My students, 13, completed their stack of applications was more than the entire stack of 120 8th graders. You know why? Because the counselors didn't have time to meet with them, because they're proctoring tests. And that's sad. That should not happen. So let's cut back on these tests and increase the number of counselors.
I would like to speak to the charter school. We realize at CTU, and we have bargained tirelessly. We have committees, we have actions. We are not standing for charter schools. We realize that there are 32 proposals for new charter schools, and 6 have been approved, and they're looking for housing. So we want to encourage our parents to stand with us as we continue to fight against them opening more charter schools. And also wraparound services. When the young lady spoke about having someone in the building, being a PSRP, being a delegate as well, we find ourselves that now they want to take nurses out of the school and give us that job of administrating medicine, shots, and different things. But we will not stand for it. We have told them downstate we're not doing it. We told them on Capitol Hill, we are not doing it. I told them if I wanted to be a nurse, I would have went to school to be a nurse. We need nurses in our schools to provide for our babies. And we need someone certified so that they will, we have horrible stories that students have been ejected to over medicating because the clerk didn't know that the assistant gave it to the student already. We don't want that. We don't want anyone liable for that. And yes, we are fighting tirelessly to get a nurse in every building in the CPS schools.
I just wanted to quickly comment on the second, the gentleman in the suit who asked about recess. We fully support recess. Recess, I have 2 boys in CPS, they're 4 and 9, and they definitely need recess. You know, I mean, kids have better outcomes in school if they get a chance to exercise in the middle of the day instead of sitting in those desks all day. And we know that, but teachers need an uninterrupted lunch break too. They need prep time. And what's happened is that with the longer school day, they've increased instructional time, but they haven't increased any kind of pay or extra funds to cover teachers for recess or you know, taken any measures to provide for the resources that a longer day comes with. And so as a result, now you have these private contractors who are quibbling over recess. But recess is extremely important. We fully support it. You know, with the charter school thing, you know, we saw them expand extremely rapidly on the south and west side, and now they're coming up on the north side. And I think that everybody in this room, or most people, anticipated that. You know, the plan is to privatize the public school system. Of course, there's several problems with that. One of which is you know, we shouldn't be handing over public taxpayer dollars to a private company or a series of private companies so certain people can make a profit. Of course, the other problem is that there's a lack of control, lack of democratic control over our schools. The charters don't have LSCs, they can't hire and fire their own principals, and so on and so forth. So, and then of course, yeah, like Matilda mentioned, the regressive disciplinary policies of Noble Street are infamous. I get kids every year from Noble Street who are counseled out of the system, and they come to Roosevelt, and they're excellent students. So, you know, I don't see what the issue is there. When it comes to security, really quickly, we are inundated with security at Roosevelt right now. We have 2 full-time police officers. We have our own 9 or 10 security staff. And then we have white shirts in our schools. Those are the security officers from central office. I'm not sure why they're in my school. Or what they're doing, but because we don't really have a violence problem at Roosevelt at all compared to some other high schools in the system. Those white shirts would be better served, and our schools would be better served if those white shirt guards were in more dangerous schools. But right now we've got a situation where I have almost like an entrapment thing going on, where we have one assistant principal who's trying to get our security guards fired. Somebody was sent through the metal detector with a knife to see if they're wearing a wire, to see if our security guards would catch them, and then when they did, the man became belligerent to see what they would do, and just as an underhanded test. So it's a weird situation and not in the best interest of our students at all. I personally feel that, you know, we're good with we could use a few extra security guards, but they should be Roosevelt High School security staff that know our students, know our teachers, and build relationships with our students instead of bringing people from central office or having full-time police officers in our school just pretty much to make arrests. So restorative justice is so important, you know, but I mean, that's something I think that we all need to work on is how do we work more closely with SEIU and with our security staff to make sure that our kids are not basically expelled, arrested, and forced out of the school system.
I just wanted to, excuse me, I wanted to address the parent from Bell. I'm a CPS graduate. I have children in CPS, and I've been teaching for 25 years here in the neighborhood as well. And I became a teacher because of the wonderful experiences I had in CPS. And I just want to say thank you because no one went into teaching to become independently wealthy. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
I just want to add that although pay is important, the working conditions have to change. The job has been so stressful since it's gotten to be such a longer school day. We were promised art and music, and we have that in many of our schools, but there's such a shortage of subs that oftentimes those people are out covering classes. We're not asking for a lot of money right now. We're just being asked to be able to do our jobs well, and it's hard to do that under the current working conditions. We need to change those.
also wanted to address, there was a parent who asked a question about what the REACH test was. The REACH test is, it's teacher created, or it's created by committees of teachers. It's a pre-test and a post-test for the beginning and the end of the year. And it's meant as a way to evaluate teachers, really. So it measures how much students have learned from the beginning to the end of the year. And relating to charter schools, I work at a school in the Rogers Park area at a high school, and we are very concerned about Noble Street coming into our community. Charter schools are devastating to neighborhood schools. I worked on the west side for many years before I moved to the north side, and they basically mess with the populations, and they devastate the environment at neighborhood schools because they lose students, but then students get counseled out. So then it becomes this merry-go-round where, you know, the charter schools don't work with diverse learners, as a parent mentioned earlier. And then so kids are constantly coming and going if the charter schools don't want them. And neighborhood schools will take and serve every student and give them wonderful opportunities to learn. Charter schools also lack the wraparound services and resources such as libraries. When I worked at Little Village High School, which was a lovely place, our security guards' kids went to charter schools, and he was always borrowing books from our library for them. So they really don't serve the whole child the way that neighborhood schools will, or should.
There's one positive thing to charter schools. We've gained a number of really good teachers from charter schools. Pay is important. The job conditions there are just as rough, and they're not being compensated in any way close to what we are. We've gained some really quality, good teachers. Thank you, charters.
Okay, I'm going to call up the next 5 speakers, and then I want to make sure we get through. We've got a few more, and then after the 5 speakers, I'll have the panel respond to that, and then we'll have the last round and then the closing remarks. The next speakers are Helen Ramirez Odell, Dr. Tana Dernbaugh, Michelle Serra, Vanessa Caleb Herman, and Josh Rudinsky. So this is Helen Ramirez Odell.
Yes. Thank you. Do I have to spell my name?
Please. Thank you.
Okay, Helen is H-E-L-E-N. Ramirez Odell is hyphenated. It's R-A-M-I-R-E-Z hyphen O-D-E-L-L. And I didn't realize I was going to be called upon to speak. I want to thank the speakers for speaking up on the need for more school nurses. I'm a retired school nurse, and one of the big things that led to my retirement was I was being spread so thinly, I didn't feel I could do an adequate job with all of the students I was supposed to serve. So it was after 40 years, and I thought it was time. So there is, you spoke so well on the need for more. But I do want to say we're right across the street from Waters School. My daughter is a graduate of Waters School. She did go on to high school, she went on to college, and now she is working for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And as a nurse, I dare say when I was in the high schools, I must have spent about 25% of my time dealing with students with mental illness. They say that 1 in 4 families are affected by it. We have students who are depressed, some who are bullied if they showed obsessive compulsive tendencies, some with post-traumatic stress disorder. Most, I think, of what I would see is anxiety, stress, and even out-and-out panic attacks, which can look like a terrible physical emergency. So I guess I'm asking the panel to comment on, you know, what you see with mental illness. Is the city, are our schools addressing it? We know the mayor's closed clinics, and of course we need not only more nurses, but we need more social workers, psychologists, you know, all kinds of clinicians. So I'd love to hear your feedback on that.
Great, thank you. The next speaker, please.
I'm Dr. Tana Dernbaugh. I'm a retired nurse educator. I'm here to speak
for the nurses, like the one you just heard, who are on the front lines in these schools with a medically difficult population. They are often asked, even at 750, which is a standard that you don't meet, to be in multiple environments in situations where a student needs them on a daily basis. As a result of that, it is another person in the building with no medical training who is asked to respond in what can be a very hazardous and sometimes deadly situation. The nurse is putting the professional license on the line by working at CPS. The student who is in that building is putting their own life on the line. This is more than education. This is a human right. That is what I would like you to bring forward to the table as you work on the lack of adequate resources for this medically difficult situation to take care of. Thank you.
My name is Michelle, M-I-C-H-E-L-E. My last name is Sarah, S as in Sam, E-R-A. And I would like to have clear snow day parameters. The schedule states that there are emergency days that should be used if school is in session, for school to be in session if the student days fall below the state requirement. Having the calendar changed in the middle of the school year is very disruptive for parents, teachers, employers. It's a disaster. It would be nice to have, you know, an actual temperature on the thermometer that dictates when school should be closed, a guideline of what time school should be closed, and could we please consider a later start to the day, maybe an amended schedule, so that we could still have school, but maybe start after snow is cleared or when temperatures warm up. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Josh Radinsky, R-A-D-I-N-S-K-Y. And I'm a parent of an 8th grader and an 11th grader, LSC member, and I'm so glad to hear CTU talk about this Aramark situation with cleaning our schools. We have a health hazard on our hands in our schools. $300 and some million that was paid to Aramark, and Aramark spent a year making excuses of why they didn't get the schools clean, and they still are not clean. We've got schools that the floor gets cleaned twice a week in a school full of 800 kids. And where I'm on the LSC, I've had the chance to see what this has done to the school community as a whole. Our engineers work hard. We've had people who knew the kids, cleaned the school, lost their job. Aramark comes in, nobody knows them. They come and they go. If there's anything we can do, this is a health hazard for our kids. It is unconscionable that we don't have clean buildings, and that we used to, and that they turned it over to a private company, and it's just destroying this so crucial part of an education. So thank you for fighting for it. Please, please, let's do something.
Hi. I have a comment more so than a question, and it's actually more for everyone, so I'm going to shift a little bit. My comments are about race. I'm sorry, my name is Vanessa Caleb Herman, and
Can you spell your name, please? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Thank you.
Middle name is Caleb, C-A-L-E-B, Vanessa, V-A-N-E-S-S-A, Herman, H-E-R-M-A-N. I have one child here at Waters and one child at Coonley. I don't know what the percentage is African American Black students at CPS. I bet someone here does. Is it like 80%? 80%, something like that? And Latinos like, right, so I'm the minority and CPS parent, as a CPS parent, and I like that. I mean, that's one reason I stayed in the city. So my comments about race have to do with the election and just wanting to tell all the neighbors here in the audience that I think that the political commentators who paid attention to the race in the election, like Natalie Moore, WBEZ, and of course Laura Washington at the Sun-Times, said that Mayor Emanuel would not have won without the black vote. And I really looked forward to seeing what like the black policy agenda was going to be, and especially with respect to CPS, because I'm devoted to the success of the whole district. I mean, my schools do not reflect the district at all. I mean, a little bit, but not much. And without every student in the city having an opportunity for a safe learning environment and to actually learn, not just get tested, and when they have recess to have some playground equipment, things like that. It's what we have now is not good enough, and I know there's raging agreement in the room. But what there might not be raging agreement is I am speaking just to encourage my black neighbors, because I believe the next mayor of Chicago will be black, either a black man or woman, and I pray for that to be the case, and that they are a CPS graduate, and that they will work unrelenting to improve education for all students in our city. But the reason I mentioned the results of the election, how Emanuel would not have won without the black vote, is because now is a time to flex that power. And with the population of parents in CPS, and I don't know about staff and teachers and administration, there's a ton of power there, and I will have your back. And I don't know who you're sitting next to, if they're brown or more black or more white, but I think everyone here would have your back. I really encourage African American men and women to flex that power. Call your legislators, write the newspapers, call your aldermen, just keep the heat on, because they know in City Hall that they would have lost this election had it not been for the support of mostly the black men and women who are already in office. I think that's it. So
thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you.
So we have a number of comments left, and I just want to ask the panel if they want to respond to those few, but if you can limit it to just a couple minutes so we can get through the rest of the public comment. Thank you.
Just really quick on the Aramark issue. I mean, CPS is trying to privatize our schools piece by piece. So they privatize the cleaning services, and we noticed a significant difference once they privatized it. At my school, we started to have a mass roach infestation. So bad that it was there's nests of roaches under the tiles. They couldn't even serve the students hot foods. They were eating bologna sandwiches for 4 weeks. Just like prisoners, basically, right? So that is absurd. I mean, I challenge the Board of Education to eat bologna sandwiches for 4 weeks, because that is harmful to our children.
I'm just going to quickly queue up the next few speakers. Julie Kosowski, D'Angelo Boyland, Kathleen Walsh, Rosemary Vega, and Neil Resnikoff.
A number of comments here have been really crying out, have been arguments for action. A very good concrete way to get involved in this struggle is that on June 9th at 5 p.m., we're going to have a big rally. We're going to see a little bit of See a Red again downtown in Chicago. We're going to start at the State of Illinois building at 100 West Randolph. Please join us June 9th for a giant rally, 5 p.m. State of Illinois building.
Thanks. Okay, real quick. Our response to mental illness is completely inadequate. We have only a handful of counselors at my school. We have a psychologist who's only there 3 days a week. I threatened to organize a parent lawsuit at my school's LSC meeting because I knew CPS people were there, and that's how we got our psychologist. 2 weeks later, she applied in January, and then she got the job, but that was not till June. So, you know, the longer that they delay on hiring staff that are mandated by law, the more money that they save. our psychologist is now only 3 days a week. So, you know, no matter what you do, you know, as soon as you whack the mole over here, another one pops up. We had to do the same thing to get special education teachers hired instead of having day-to-day subs for months at a time. It's ridiculous. The Aramark thing, our school used to be spotless, and now it's filthy. In fact, it's funny that it came up today. I know I kind of brought it up in speaking about finance, but a teacher found a rat in her classroom just today. You know, and I've always known, I mean, it's an old building, there are rats in the basement, but not in the classroom. That's a first in my 11 years. You know, first we had a night crew and a day crew, and the night crew was non-union, and the day crew was union. And what they did was, right after the strike, they entered into this process they called unmixing, which they forced the principals to choose either all non-union or all union people. And then it all fell apart from there, and all of our guys got fired or they got transferred out to different schools unnecessarily, and now our schools are filthy, and it really, really impacts the classroom. It's disgusting. There's food wrappers on the ground. The desks are sticky. Things don't get cleaned up. I've gone into my classroom on a Monday morning on several occasions, and it has not been touched with pop bottles and paper on the floor over the entire weekend. So it's a huge issue. And to think that we're spending tens of millions of dollars to have dirty schools, that could be for free, right? So, you know, and then just really quickly about race, I'm not sure exactly what to say, you know, except I can say that since schools have been closed and charters are expanding primarily on the south and west sides at a very rapid rate, we're losing African-American educators throughout the city, and it's a huge crisis because we need a diverse faculty and staff that looks like the students that we serve. So that's a real issue that needs to be addressed.
We're going to make this the final comment from the panel and then bring up the rest of the comment.
Just one more piece on the mental health issues. A lot of our clinicians are overworked. We've got caseloads that are really large. That's counselors, social workers, psychologists, nurses. But in addition to that, we've often been instructed, connect these families to outside agencies, and then you don't have to do it in the school. There are a lot of wonderful outside agencies out there, but the state's changed its Medicare program. It's privatized a lot of it. Just this year alone, a lot of our families were shifted from regular Medicare into private HMO-style Medicare programs. We relied an awful lot on a program called SAS. You could make a call if there was a child in trouble of harming themselves or others. SAS would come out right away. They'd help to assess the child, and if they needed additional resources, they could link the families up to it. Those private HMOs don't participate in SAS. If you make that call now, you get a customer care representative. That's not a health care person. That's a customer care representative in another state. That's not helping our kids. Caseload size are too low, or too high. It's not helping our kids. We need the wraparound support. We need that kind of services for our families.
Great. So Julie Kosowski, D'Angelo Boyland, Kathleen Walsh, Rosemary Vega, and Neil Resnikoff.
Hi, I'm Julie Kosowski. It's spelled K-O-S-O-W-S-K-I. I'm a parent of a Chicago Public School student, a 5th grader, a graduate. My dad taught at Cameron so many years ago. I have a lot to say, but since it's getting late, I would like to call to all of our attention again who's not here. So who is here are Chicago Public School teachers. We have Chicago Public School parents. We have community supporters. But the folks that run the Chicago Public Schools are not here. And if CPS were here, I would want them to know that they are sucking the joy out of education. They are also endangering our students, and they are making children of this city, of the Chicago Public Schools, carry a toxic load that the grown-ups missing from this room need to remove from the backs of Chicago Public School children. So if, in fact, CPS was here, if they were here, I would want to submit the CTU contract demands for the City of Chicago students deserve to CPS, because the truth is that standing up for teachers means standing up for our kids. And I think the folks present here are proving that. There's more, but thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Let's take this off.
Can you state your name and spell it, please? Thank you.
My name is D'Angelo Boyland, D'_Angelo, last name Boyland. I'm a community representative at Uplift High School for the ALSC. I just want to touch on the systemic racism that I see so much of in CPS. The statistics bear it out. You know, if you look at every major statistic, they show you how kids that come from minority backgrounds are really less served than those who don't. But also the issue of poverty plays into it as well. I think it's evident also with the school closings how most of the students who've had to attend other schools in underserved areas, they have to attend other schools that are farther away than schools in areas where they have relatively more resources. But I also want to touch on the curriculum that's being taught in these schools as well. The curriculum that you really see that's taught really isn't inclusive of what a lot of different minority ethnic backgrounds have done in America and around the world. And I think that plays a huge role in how the students from these backgrounds internalize what they can be when they grow up, and that plays a role in how much energy and how much effort they put into their educational academic futures. My question to that was I wanted to know if there were any plans on the part of CTU to make any demands that CPS include curriculum that's more culturally relevant, what plans or demands you might be pushing on CPS to hire more educators from these communities. It's also been proven statistically that educators from the neighborhoods in which they teach have a more profound impact on the students that are in these schools, and really what pushes and what demands the CTU was willing to take or has taken either in the areas of pushing for more culturally relevant curriculum or pushing for more students from their environmental backgrounds to teach within their respective schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Kathleen Walsh. It's Kathleen, last name Walsh. I'm a registered nurse and an educator, and I also do pro bono case management for people who are constantly being lost and abused in this unhealth care system. I come from a very strong union family, very proudly. Many of the members of my family were Chicago public school teachers and librarians, and many other union members as well. So I grew up understanding the power and the importance of the union for maintaining and enhancing the public arena. It is the overall public arena, not just education, but healthcare, everything else is under a huge threat from privatization. Privatization is a very, very bad idea. I taught in the parochial schools for 8 years and was constantly discriminated against and exploited. When I started teaching science in a parochial school, there was nothing. They had Dick and Jane books, which I promptly threw out. I had no equipment, I had nothing. I had no resources, I had nobody I could go to for help. So my students and I did theater productions, and we raised money and we bought our own equipment. That's what privatization means. Now, probably this day, parochial schools have better services than that, but there's no guarantee, there's no safety. And as far as testing goes, I am privileged to be an alum from Chicago State University, and Dr. Frank Lanier was my mentor when I was teaching science. And he came to observe me and help me, and eventually I understood how dangerous testing can be. I had really good students who would fail a test, which made no sense. I knew they knew the material because I had discussed it with them. I knew they understood. They asked intelligent questions and they would bomb a test. That makes no sense. So eventually I included the students in test writing questions. They were 8th graders. 8th graders are marvelous people. They're smart, they're creative, and they're all too often suppressed and considered as unimportant or not as capable as they are. So we would have test question writing sessions. I would use their questions, some of them edited, changed, and so on, and I reduced the value of their grade from 50% for testing down to 30%. My kids aced every high school entry test they took. They did great. Why? Because they were allowed to be creative and they were assisted in not allowing the privatization, pardon my voice, the privatization frenzy to suppress their creativity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take the last speaker in this round, and I apologize, I know we ran late. I'd just like to ask for your patience for 5 more minutes. I'm going to sum up the rest of the testimonies here after Neil goes, and then we'll ask for a quick response from the panel and closing remarks from Nicole and Charisse from Parents for Teachers. Thank you.
Neil Resnikoff, N-E-A-L R-E-S-N-I-K-O-F-F, Albany Park, North Park, Mayfair Neighbors for Peace and Justice. I was very happy to hear some of your panelists' remarks opposing the use of standardized tests in the schools because, as we know from research, the standardized tests basically reflect the socioeconomic background of the students, and they just tell us what we already know about that. And it's very good to see that the CTU has a negotiating plank to reduce the standardized tests to the maximum. As we all know, one of the standardized tests that's a big thorn this year and will be even worse next year is the PARCC test that so many students have been opting out of in Chicago and nationally. And what's behind the PARCC test is the Common Core Standards, which is corporation-inspired standards to narrow the curriculum, cut out social justice teaching, narrow real critical thinking, and then to have these PARCC tests that'll only have a 30% passing rate to select out the students true to the history of the standardized tests and the eugenics movement and so forth to separate out students. The question is, how about CTU also having a negotiating plank to advocate for cutting down and removing the Common Core standards from Illinois?
Thank you. We have one more speaker in this round, Rosemary Vega.
Hi. I was like, please don't let me get banned from the church. I'm joking. I even walked up with the Bible. They can't touch me. No, my name is Rosemary Vega, R-O-U-S-E-M-A-R-Y-V-E-G-A. And I'm here, of course, to address the ones we usually see as ghost town, right? CPS. But I just wanted to say to them that we're used to being ignored instead of responded to. We're used to being reformed instead of restored. But one thing we are not going to get used to is this corporate takeover of our schools and the attack on our teachers. So. But one thing I do want to see in the CTU's contract, well, so let me say CPS has maliciously caused parents and teachers to have very, how do I say this? Against each other, right? They've caused this imaginary war. So my thing for the CTU would be, how can how can we put on the contract on how to rebuild relationship between parents and teachers that CPS had maliciously broken? That's what I want to see. A parent advocate, you know, for not just parents, but for teachers and students. How do we get on that contract? How do we get a voice to represent us on that contract, that we can represent you while you guys represent, you know, our kids? You know how I feel about teachers. You know, I think teachers are very precious because they want to do the job I don't. And I just want to thank you. And I just want to thank you guys. Thank you.
You, Rosemary. So before I ask for the final response from the panel, I apologize to the last 5 speakers, but we've run out of time. But I do want to, I see a couple questions here that I want to make sure that the panel addresses. One was, well, maybe not the panel, but the forum was great, but how can we get these messages out to the rest of the public? This is one forum. The other is, how can we gain access to TIF money for our schools? And the last one, which I think is burning on everyone's mind, is there a likelihood of a strike? And so if the panel, if from the CTU could kindly respond to, I know this was a lot, to the various comments and questions from this last round, and if I could call Charisse and Nicole to come up, and after the comments, they're going to give their closing remarks. But I also just wanted to let you all know, just remind you again that the comments at this forum have been officially recorded, and we're going to make these publicly available. We'll make them available on our website, and also we are going to present them formally to Chicago Public Schools, given that they have been absent from this public forum. So the CTU, oh, and I also want to say that thank CAN TV for being here for filming this tonight. It'll be aired on CAN TV, and I believe I also saw Labor Beat here as well. So there are multiple ways to be able to review the testimonies here tonight. Okay, thank you. CTU, final comments from the panel.
Hello, everybody. I would like to respond to the young man. There is a clause in our bargaining to ensure that students are taught by trained professionals, invested in a career in education by demand that the CPS stop the contributing to the Teach of America and take those and transfer those investments to a group called Grow Your Own. And the reason why I say that, because I'm a product of Grow Your Own. I worked in the schools about 18 years. I went back to school. I just received my bachelor's degree to become a teacher. And the reason I was encouraged by my fellow co-workers to go back. And the reason, the thing Grow Your Own is to bring in people like myself that's been working in the school, that works in the neighborhoods, that know the students, and students know us. I remember the time when I was growing up, my brother would warn me about Miss Thomas. Say, when you get to 6th grade, Miss Thomas don't play. And those things don't happen anymore because there's such a great turnaround. And our students don't know what to expect, and this is why they act out. So we are at, that's one of our contract demands, is that we do have people of color, people like myself that's been in the school, that does have class management, and I know how to deal with students, and I went back and got my credentials. Yes.
Just to speak quickly to this question of diversity in the curriculum and having a racially inclusive curriculum that holds up the achievements of African Americans, of Latinos, of people in our history who aren't just the great white men that we're too often given in class. Article 7 talks about, adds a reference to culturally relevant curriculum into the language which defends or provides for texts, supplies, and curriculum materials. And in Article 46-1, what currently is a reference to curriculum, texts, and supplementary materials, then adds the phrase that reflect multicultural, multiracial representations of the multi-representation of contributions made by those groups. Two more quick comments on that. The union has a proposal which would require the Board of Education to deal with an elected committee called a PPLC, a Professional Leadership Committee, which is actually an elected body that consists of faculty, which we believe would really lead to cutting down on Common Core and testing. It would require the decisions about curriculum get actually made by educators, not just by a hand-picked group of people the principal chooses. And then finally, we've made, on the question of parents and their involvement, we've made proposals that would include parents in the class size panels that would investigate class size overages to allow parents to participate in trying to hold class sizes down. And we have a series of demands that would head off and stop charters and turnarounds, which, as many people know, public schools, as Tim mentioned, have elected local school councils in which parents get to choose, among other things, to hire and fire the principal. Charter schools and turnaround schools don't. And so we're very conscious that our demand about preserving neighborhood schools is about preserving parent voice and trying to hold it up.
I just really want to emphasize how this austerity agenda was created by Rauner and Rahm. They want this agenda to close down our schools. Let's just be very clear about that. And if anyone has done research into New Orleans, they have 0 public schools left, okay? All charter schools. It didn't happen over 30 years, didn't happen over 20 years. It happened in a very short period of time, okay, that they can privatize their schools. They are going after us, people. And it can't just be teachers fighting, you have to be parents, students, and that's why we're all here together to fight this. And on the strike question, if we do not get a contract that supports our students and our teachers, we will be prepared to strike. And every school right now is preparing contract action teams. My school has made one right now that goes out and connects with these parents, that connects with the community members. And we'll start going after school and before school, flyering parents, talking with them about what's going on or what are the true issues, and we will prepare to strike if necessary.
Regarding culturally sensitive curriculum, that's super important. My school was on Chicago Tonight last night, actually, because of an algebra program called Intensive Algebra, which is a wonderful program, and it's, you know, helping raise the kids' math scores or whatever, and you know, I think it's great. I'm very proud of my school and my teachers, and you know, that's great. But that comes at a cost. You know, all the different CTE programs, budgets, severe budget cuts, double period mandatory algebra for freshmen means that we have fewer electives. And we have been shedding electives in the social studies department now for 4 or 5 years. So we've lost, just in my department, AP art history, Latin American history, African American history, Asian studies. It's all gone. And we used to have 16 sections of Latin American history, and we have none. And it's a real shame. And you know, part of it was the work of a previous principal who decided those classes weren't going to be serving his purposes for increasing ACT scores, so therefore they were expendable. And part of it is just this overall drive. The standardized testing is driving out everything that's valuable to our communities, except for math and science and reading and grammar. You know, I even know of teachers whose social studies departments have been completely eliminated and merged, and now they call their department reading in the social studies. Well, the social studies is its own set of skills, its own set of values and beliefs. And you know, there are those of us that believe that the primary purpose of an education is to obtain good employment, and while you know that's a worthy goal, I think the primary purpose of education is to create good, well-rounded citizens who are culturally adept, who know why to take action, what to question, and when to do that. And that's so important. I mean, it's about building and maintaining a strong, healthy democracy. And the overemphasis on standardized tests destroys that. When it comes to the strike, I hope we don't have to strike. I really don't. We're be a lot better at it this time, I think, than we were the first time around. We did pretty good. It certainly is a lesson in democracy. So if it comes to that, yeah, we're completely prepared to strike.
Okay, I would like to thank everyone for coming out. I also want to thank the Northside Action for Justice for helping us put this event together. Thank you. These contract negotiations are an important time to insert the voice of parents, students, and community members. We can have a say over the direction of CPS and our children's education. It is dire for students, parents, teachers, community members, and CTU to work together so that our children receive the best quality education, the kind of education that they deserve. And if that means that we have to march 50,000 strong in the streets of Chicago to yell it to the front door of the board, so be it. Yeah.
I just have a few call to action items to go over. So as Erica said in the beginning, we do have those postcards at the table in front. If you could fill those out, we are planning to collect those and deliver them to the Board of Education. Parents for Teachers has used this method before. We found it to be an extremely effective action to communicate our education priorities. There's also a sign-up sheet for our meetings. If you would like to, if you're interested in having smaller meetings at your school regarding these concerns, so that's also at the front table. There are 2 other CTU CPS contract forums that will be taking place throughout the city. So the first is Thursday, is Thursday, June 4th at 6 p.m. at Mount Carmel, Church at 2978 South Wabash. That one's sponsored by Coco. The second will be Wednesday, June 10th at 6 p.m. at Kelly Hall at the YMCA, which is 824 North Hamlin, and that's sponsored by Blocks Together. And then finally, as Jesse had mentioned, June 9th at 5 p.m., there's a rally for a fair contract in Adjust Chicago at the Thompson Center. So we hope you all will join us for that. Thank you.
Thank you all. And again, please sign in at the sign-in sheets in the back and we can keep you aware of up-and-coming events. Thank you.